Welcome to video number 2 in a series of 17 reasons why entrepreneurs fail in business. Hey, it's Gary Coxe again. Now, in the first video, we talked about IPA, income producing activity. Hope you're working hard on that one. So today, what are we going to talk about in video number 2? Here it is. How poorly or greatly designed is your team? Companies that have massive success are companies that have a great team. So we're going to talk about the dynamics today of having a great team. Now keep in mind, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to ask you, how well designed is your team? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. All right, so let's talk about this. Now, you may be a solo entrepreneur, but this content will still enable you to grow your business. I think one of the biggest reasons why a lot of businesses fail is because, number one, as we're talking about, obviously, they don't have the right team. But how do we create the wrong team? Well, usually when you get started in a business, one of the first things that we end up doing is we lean on people we know, such as friends or family. That's one of the worst things you can do, because many times you bring in somebody who's a friend or family because you trust them. It doesn't mean that you're bringing them on basically because they have a specific skill. So often what happens is you know somebody, you bring them on board because you trust them, but they don't have the skill, and you try to teach them the skill, and if things don't go well, what happens many times, you learn to lean on them even though they may not have the skills that you really need. And because you lean on them even though they're doing a poor job, it prevents you from finding somebody else. Or if it's a friend or a family member, it's not the easiest way to work around things when it comes to having to fire them. So I have a philosophy. If I bring anybody that I know into my company, I tell them this: if you're okay with me letting you go, then I'm okay with you coming on board. Because if you don't do the skill, just because you're my friend, I'm still going to have to let you go. There's one particular person. They wanted to have a job with me in sales, and I said, I appreciate that, but if you don't hit your numbers, I will let you go, and I don't want to do that. Now, I know for some people that sounds harsh, but the bottom line is, if you have a hard time sleeping sometimes because the bills aren't being paid, or you're not getting enough business or sales or whatever it is, and you know for a fact there's somebody on your team that's poison, or somebody on the team that's not doing the job they need to be doing effectively, and maybe you can't move them in another position because you can't afford that, well, then you're going to sit there and you're going to keep that person, and it's going to hurt your business. So I want you to ask yourself, when it comes to your hiring process, how good are you at it? And one of the mistakes I think a lot of people make, and there's going to be a couple of them I want to talk about with you on this. Number one, when it comes to hiring, they don't interview the person enough. That's like seeing somebody at the grocery store that, maybe you're single and you're looking at a date, and you see somebody and hey, like to go on a date. You go on a date, on the first date you ask them to marry you. That doesn't really make any sense. You've got to get to know them a little bit. So make sure your interview process is several times, 3, 4, 5, 6 times maybe. But if you're hiring somebody on the spot, be very careful about that. Once in a blue moon I do. And I usually do that after going through many, many, many other interviews. So think about that. The other thing I want you to think about is evaluations. In one particular area of our company, I used to use evaluations all the time. And evaluation helps people see where they're at. It does take some time to do. You can evaluate them on, do they come in on time? How creative are they? How cooperative are they? These are things to be thinking about. One of the important things also when it comes to hiring for me, 90% of the positions I would say that I hire, now this works for me. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but I'm just going to give you an idea. I have certain boundaries or perimeters I'm looking for. If I need to bring in somebody on board and I know I need that person on a regular basis, I want to find out if they're able to work or available on the weekends. If a person, I would say 90% of the team that I have, if they're not available, at least on the weekends for a phone call or a question, I will not bring them on board. One person we brought them on for a little bit. They wanted more work. I said, you refuse to work on weekends, so we can't give you any more work, and we don't give them any more work. In fact, that person I don't think they've done anything with us for like 4 months. So that's for me. So the reason I need that is because I move very quickly when I have an idea. I'm a firm believer when I have an idea, move on it, make it happen. And I don't want to have an idea on Friday afternoon knowing that I have to wait on Monday. That's just me. So figure out what are the standards, what are the things that you're looking for, and see if they fit that. But if you don't know what that is, then you're going to have a problem. The other thing you have to be very careful of is if you're the type of person that micromanages all the time, then you're going to hire somebody that needs micromanaging. What you want to do is you want to hire somebody when you start giving them instructions and they get it, they go, oh, I got it. You want somebody to interrupt you that says, I got it, and take the lead. Also, be very important to think about, don't focus on delegating tasks, but delegating responsibilities. So I like to look for people that I can delegate responsibilities. I don't enjoy babysitting adults, but that's what managers do. You have to manage people. Some people are followers, some people are leaders. So hopefully this gives you some insight. And again, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how well designed is your team? Because if you don't have the right team or people, you're going to have huge problems. We just started implementing to let somebody go just 2 days ago. And the reason being, this person was never on time, and every time they said they would get something done, they never met deadlines, and it was dramatically hurting the progress of the company. We had to execute, if you will, and let that person go. One final thing on this one, you've heard the term hire slow, fire fast. Most of the time, I'm a firm believer in that. I definitely believe in the hiring slow process, get to know the person a little bit. Depending on the process, sometimes I may literally take them out to dinner, get to know them, get to know their family, depending on what the position is. The hiring slow, firing fast. The firing fast, I agree with that most of the time. I'll wrap up with one quick story where there was an exception. The story was, a friend of mine told me this story about his friend who was a billionaire, and he had a particular company. One of his companies, I believe, was in Germany, and he never goes to Germany. He lives in the United States, but he had a manager in Germany managing this company, and that manager was actually trying to sell his company. He didn't have the right to do that. It's not his company. He's the manager. And then the owner of the company found out about it. Now, you would think that's pretty deceptive. You would think he would fire him right away, but he did not. Why? Because he knew by firing him right away, it would be very, very destructive and it would be too much chaos. So what he did, he set up the infrastructure knowing he was going to fire them. Once the infrastructure that was set up, he then executed that and fired that person. Now, I know for a lot of people, that's a difficult thing. Let me tell you where the challenge is for this. If you knew somebody was trying to sell your company underneath you, the first thing you'd probably want to do is fire them when? Right away. But he did not. So now imagine that person is trying to sell your company underneath you, and you have to be really cool with them for the next several months. And then maybe they're doing a good job and they're being very nice and friendly. Then one day, while you're ready to make the execution, you are not going to have a conversation with them because now you're pissed off because they immediately said something to you in the moment or just yesterday. They did something to you months ago that you have to remember, and now you're going to execute and you're going to get fired. Not an easy thing to do. So that case, in this particular example, you would fire slow. But in most cases, hire slow, fire fast. One particular case for me where I learned this, what I just shared with you, after what I did, unfortunately, I had one particular person that did something, this was probably 25 years ago, that did something in the company, and I fired them way too fast. And unfortunately, when I fired that person, there is another person in the company. They had an agreement, well, if you go, no matter for what reason, you quit, you fire, I'm going too. And man, I lost 2 people at one time. What I should have done is set up the infrastructure better, then later on let that person go. All right, easier said than done. Hope you've enjoyed it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how well designed is your team? 10 being the highest. and make sure you really go through some of this information and figure out what is it that I need to do differently to hire better people, and might there be somebody that I gotta let go. I'm out of here between now and the next time we get to chat. You know what to do, and if you don't, you do now. Title of one of my books, Don't Let Others Rent Space in Your Head. Have an awesome day. Till video number 3.